Welcome to NTD News, I'm Paul Graney. Here are today's top stories. The Defense Department says it's on the lookout for potential Iranian attacks on U.S. interests in the Middle East. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said today that U.S. forces are well prepared. President Trump's campaign raises $46 million in the final quarter of 2019. Trump's campaign manager says impeachment helped with fundraising. Places of worship will now get more money from the Federal Security Fund, this after a surge in anti-Semitism. Lawmakers are urging non-profits to use it. And a new law in China is set to force companies to hand over access to encrypted data, putting their intellectual property and company secrets at risk. And ash and smoke from relentless Australian wildfires have reached New Zealand, turning skies red and snow brown. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper says Iran might be planning additional attacks on U.S. interests in the Middle East. This following violent rallies outside the U.S. Embassy in Iraq's capital.
The national security team.
Esper told reporters at the Pentagon that the U.S. has indications that more Iranian provocations may be in the cards. He added that the U.S. will act either in response or preemptively to Iran's actions if it has enough warning.
If anybody challenges us, they will be met with a severe response, a strong response by U.S. forces.
He didn't give details, but said the U.S. has a vast capability to do any number of things.
It's time, finally, for Iran to start behaving like a normal country.
Esper's announcement comes after a missile attack on an Iraqi base last week that left an American contractor dead. President Trump later authorized airstrikes on targets related to the group in Iraq and Syria that he says was behind the attack. The strikes prompted Iranian-backed militias to retaliate, igniting violent protests outside the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Those who gathered hurled stones at buildings, set fires, and breached the compound's outer walls. The U.S. blames the Iranian-backed Shia militias for the protests. On Tuesday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also pointed out on Twitter that key militia leaders were spotted in the crowd, while other members showed up in their militia uniforms and carried flags. 100 Marines from Kuwait and 750 soldiers have been deployed in reaction to the rallies, with the possibility of more in the coming days.
President Trump's re-election campaign raised $46 million in the final quarter of 2019. This is the most of any 2020 candidate.
The campaign also has $102.7 million cash on hand. That's the most of any 2020 candidate. This, even after getting impeached by the House. Trump's campaign manager said impeachment has actually brought in more contributions from supporters. He called the campaign unstoppable. The day Congress voted to formally launch the impeachment inquiry in October, the campaign raised $3 million online. Tuesday was the last day of the fundraising quarter. Candidates have until January 31st to release fundraising details to the Federal Election Commission.
Julián Castro announced today that he would end his bid for the presidency. The former housing secretary was the only Latino candidate in the Democratic primary. He said on Twitter, "It's with profound gratitude to all of our supporters that I suspend my campaign for president today." In his year-long campaign, Castro championed progressive policies but did not find his footing in polls. He's a native of San Antonio and was its mayor for 5 years. Today, New York lawmakers urged places of worship and other non-profits to access the now increased federal security budget. NTD's Miguel Moreno has the details on the announcement prompted by a spat of anti-Semitic hate crimes.
Places of worship have repeatedly been targets for mass shootings and terrorist attacks throughout the nation. This is a reality that we refuse to accept.
The federal security budget has been increased to $90 million, a more than 30% increase of money that can be accessed by places of worship and other nonprofits for surveillance and security.
So as many religious institutions in New York City need the fortifications that they're deserving of, whether it's cameras or additional security personnel.
This announcement was prompted by the recent surge in anti-Semitic crimes in New York City. Most recently, the Muncie stabbing, in which a suspect broke into a rabbi's home and stabbed 5 Hasidic Jews on Hanukkah. But security is one aspect. Others say this isn't solving the heart of the matter.
Well, I mean, it might help, but I'm not sure what else you can do. It's a deep-seated issue. People are unsatisfied.
I think it'll help, but you gotta change people's minds and attitudes.
And how do you think we can do that?
It's a long haul.
Most, if not all, of the trending attacks on Jews appear to have been done by blacks. Tension between these two communities goes back to the Crown Heights riots of 1991, riots in which Jews were targeted and attacked by black marchers. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, however, said he has the best of both worlds in a district with many from each community.
We've been through traumatic events before, including the disturbances in Crown Heights that took place in the early 90s, and we came together as a community. We're going to make sure that we come together as a community again.
Some people also have a problem with this year's bail reform, which they say could lead to more hate crimes. This is because judges in New York State can no longer hold someone in jail if they believe the defendant is a danger to the public. This means that someone could be charged with a hate crime burglary and be released without cash bail multiple times. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
And the acting Homeland Security Secretary requested a review of state laws that allow undocumented immigrants to get driver's licenses and how this will affect law enforcement. On December 31st, Wolf sent a memo to agencies including U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Coast Guard, and the Transportation Security Administration regarding new state laws allowing undocumented immigrants to obtain driving licenses. He requested a study on how the laws will affect the Department of Homeland Security's activities into immigration, human trafficking, drug smuggling, and counterterrorism. He wants to know what Department of Vehicles information is already available to each agency and how it is used in daily operations. This in addition to the potential security consequences of losing access to the DMV data. In an effort to boost the slumping economy, China's central bank is pumping more cash into its financial system. But will it work? NTD's Catherine Wen explains the details.
China's central bank said on Wednesday that it will cut the bank's reserve rate by 0.5 percentage point, injecting about $115 billion into its financial system. The rate cut brings into focus the health of the Chinese economy, a driver of global growth. As the country's GDP growth hit a nearly 30-year low, the move is widely expected, but one China expert says it might not work.
We know that they have printed a lot of money. They could keep printing more money, but apparently the money is not going to where it is really needed.
She has said the big state-owned companies already get generous government support, and for the small private companies that really need the money, banks are unwilling to lend them because they are more likely to default. According to official numbers, the bad loan ratio for loans to small companies is 3 times higher than loans to large companies.
And some people just got money and run away, disappear, resulting in tons of back loans. And they don't want to, so that's why the banks are reluctant to loan money to them.
And he says the reason for this is the lack of trust.
But in China, the system is set up in a way that basically everyone is lying to everyone else. The government is lying. That's the biggest problem of all.
That's why she has said the interest rate tool commonly used in market economies may not work well in China. Since early 2018, China has cut the rate 8 times. But as the central bank keeps pumping in more cash, bad loans are stacking up, and concerns are growing about the health of the financial system.
There are several banks have defaulted on their loans, and there also been reporting several times of bank runs. People are just rushing to the bank to get a deposit out.
She also mentioned that for the large state-owned companies, the loan they get might be spent on real estate, which won't contribute to productivity, but add to the real estate bubble in China, which might add risk to a potential financial crisis within the country. Reporting by Catherine Wen, NTD News.
In China, a new encryption law went into effect on January 1st, raising concerns that the sensitive data of U.S. companies may be at risk. NTD's Penny Zhou has more.
Starting January 1st, the Chinese regime is implementing a new encryption law that they say helps protect cybersecurity. But critics say global companies in China can no longer keep their data secret safe. Foreign companies in China often use encryption technology to protect their data and communications. But the new law requires such encryption products to be turned over to the Chinese authorities for a check. Critics say the law effectively gives the Chinese regime access to business secrets of foreign companies operating in China.
So they have to turn over encryption keys. They cannot use VPNs any longer in China. They most likely cannot use their own servers in China. They must use Chinese servers. So every bit of information and intellectual property, research and development that companies run their companies on is now open for use by the Chinese Communist Party for no cost.
Cybersecurity expert Casey Fleming said the law is one of the many methods the Chinese regime uses to steal intellectual property from the U.S. He compares the strategy to a fight that won't kill the adversary immediately, but gradually.
One hit there or one hit there, what the Chinese call it is a cut. It's basically 1,000 death by 1,000 cuts. So you don't really notice a cut here and a cut there. But, by the time 1,000 cuts have accumulated, then you're close to death. And that's the way the Chinese Communist Party continues to philosophize and operate.
China's intellectual property theft is one major reason that triggered the Trump administration's trade war with China. The U.S. and China will sign a Phase 1 trade deal later this month. Officials say the deal will cover intellectual property, but haven't yet given the specifics. Reporting by Penny Zhou, NTD News, New York.
Lebanon received an Interpol arrest warrant on Thursday for former Nissan boss Carlos Ghosn. This as Turkey launched an investigation into his daring escape from Japan via Istanbul.
There was a media frenzy on Thursday outside a Beirut house, believed to be the home of ousted Nissan boss Carlos Ghosn, now the subject of an Interpol arrest warrant. It's thought a car seen leaving and then returning to the property was carrying his wife. A man also entered, telling reporters he was a doctor and there for Ghosn's wife. There was no sign, though, of the man the media were hoping to catch a glimpse of. Former auto executive Carlos Ghosn has become an international fugitive after he revealed on Tuesday that he'd fled to Lebanon. The 65-year-old was escaping Japan's justice system, which he described as rigged. Ghosn was first arrested in Tokyo in November 2018. He faces 4 charges for alleged financial crimes, including hiding income and enriching himself through payments to car dealerships in the Middle East, charges which he denies. Sources close to him say a delay to a trial until April next year and a strict ban on communicating with his wife were behind his decision to flee. It's understood he used a private security company to help him escape Japan on a private jet. Flight tracking data suggests Ghosn used 2 different planes, flying to Lebanon via Istanbul. On Thursday, Turkish police detained 7 people, including 4 pilots, as part of an investigation into Ghosn's passage through the country. Japanese public broadcaster NHK said authorities there had allowed Ghosn to carry a spare French passport in a locked case while out on bail. It potentially shed some light on how he managed to escape, with other passports believed to be in possession of Japanese lawyers. Ghosn, who holds French, Lebanese and Brazilian citizenship, has deep ties to Lebanon, the country of his childhood. A senior Lebanese security official said it wasn't clear if Ghosn would be summoned for questioning over the Interpol arrest warrant, but said Lebanon doesn't extradite its citizens to foreign states.
And President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, said he learned about highly extensive corruption during his recent trip to Ukraine. He spoke of a series of criminal acts by the former administration.
When the full scope of what happened to the Ukraine comes out, there are going to be an awful lot of Americans who participated in the Ukrainian corruption.
Giuliani spoke on his way into Trump's Mar-a-Lago New Year's Eve gathering, having recently returned from Ukraine. He said the corruption in Ukraine was vast and extensive, involving the highest levels of the previous administration. He also said the Bidens laundered millions of dollars out of the country. Giuliani said he is gathering evidence and new witnesses are coming forward.
This is expanding. It will turn out to be a series of criminal acts. It'll involve the highest levels of the Obama administration, and it's the reason why the Democratic Party is in panic.
Giuliani said he would be willing to testify, or he even had another proposition.
Or I do what I do best. I try the case.
Giuliani is not expected to be part of the president's defense team in the impeachment trial. He said he believes that historically, the impeachment of President Trump will go down as an illegal coup.
There's never been an impeachment that was put through with no witnesses being allowed, no lawyers being allowed, threatening to put people in jail.
Giuliani said he will reveal further details about what he learned in Ukraine when he has figured out the right forum to do it.
And coming up, a French transit strike breaks the record for being the longest of its kind. Strikers and French President Macron are still battling over pension reform. More on that when we return.
It was special for us.
Bring your family, let your children experience this.
I know my daughter just loves it. When the curtain first opened, I looked out at her face and she was amazed by what she saw.
It's great for the whole family.
And I have a granddaughter. I want her to see something like this because it'll probably enrich her soul and her development as a person. It would change her life.
It's hard for kids to listen to parents all the time, but when they hear it from an outside influence as well, reinforcing your values, that's great.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And her birthday was Friday, so we surprised her with tickets.
I was just so amazed. They're amazing, amazing dancers.
The girls are so elegant and beautiful, and the colors are amazing.
It's just amazing. It's truly breathtaking. Just the story. There's a story behind everything as well, which is amazing. There's so much culture.
It's a bridge between meditation and peace and where we are now in our busy lives.
As an adult and a teacher, it's awesome to see kids reacting and having that positive reaction to the show.
I will see it next year and year after that and the year after that. It is just incredible, absolutely beautiful.
I wish I could see it again, like right now.
The French transportation strike that crippled holiday travel plans has now become the longest in French history.
The ongoing French railway strike has now become the longest railway strike in France's history, surpassing a 1986 strike. French transportation workers are now on day 29 of the strike. The strike started over President Macron's plan to reform the pension system.
The strike is necessary so that Macron and his government make an effort so that things can be evened out and made more equal for everyone.
Macron's plan includes raising the age to receive a full pension, forcing people to work past the official retirement age. It also involves other factors that the working public says would reduce the benefits they are currently entitled to. The strikes began on December 5th and caused chaos over the holiday season. Macron said during his New Year's address that he expects to carry forward the core of the new pension plan. A French transport union representative was not impressed.
The statement that he has now made doesn't surprise us because we weren't expecting anything from him. He's a president who's full of himself, who doesn't listen to the people.
Protesters blocked a bus depot in northern Paris on Thursday, showing no signs of giving up.
Taiwan's defense ministry has said that its top military official was among 8 people killed in a helicopter accident today.
Taiwan's top military official was among 8 people killed on Thursday after a helicopter made a forced landing in a mountainous area near the capital, Taipei. The reasons for the crash in the wake of a forced landing were unknown, the military said in a statement, adding that Air Force General Shen Yiming had died. The main portion of the helicopter lay in forest, its blades shattered into pieces, as dozens of rescuers combed the wreck for survivors among the 13 on board. The helicopter had left Taipei on a mission to visit soldiers in the northeast county of Yilan ahead of Lunar New Year. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen mourned the loss.
Today
is a sad day. A few of our outstanding officers have passed on.
They were a few of the best officials in the military, especially Chief of General Staff Shen Yiming. He was a very brilliant and responsible leader. He was always the Chief of General Staff, respected by everyone. His departure is a loss for us, and we are deeply saddened.
She has asked the country's defense minister to launch an investigation.
And the U.S. chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, offered his condolences today to Taiwan's military for the tragic loss. And coming up, ash and smoke from relentless Australian wildfires has reached New Zealand, turning skies red and snow brown. More on that after the break.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
The NBA's longest-serving commissioner, David Stern, has died. Stern oversaw the growth of the league into a $5 billion a year business.
David Stern died on Wednesday at 77 years old. He suffered a brain hemorrhage earlier in December and underwent emergency surgery. The league said he died on New Year's Day with his wife and their family at his bedside. Stern was involved with the NBA for nearly 2 decades before becoming its 4th commissioner in 1984. He spent 30 years more there, seeing the NBA rise into a global power. During his time, Stern oversaw the birth of 7 new franchises, as well as the women's equivalent to the NBA, the WNBA. This and the NBA Development League, known as the G League, provided countless opportunities to pursue careers playing basketball that previously weren't available. Under Stern, the popularity of basketball spread worldwide. The late David Stern speaking here as NBA commissioner in 2012.
Life is a journey, and it's been a spectacular journey.
He left his position in 2014, at which point the league had grown to a more than $5 billion a year industry.
Wildfires that have ravaged Australia since October have affected New Zealand with ash and smoke, discolouring New Zealand's skies. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy says its citizens should leave and warns of more danger to come.
The wildfires burning in southeastern Australia have affected the skies of neighboring New Zealand. New Zealand's skies hold a smoky, dark reddish tint. Snow on top of mountains in New Zealand's South Island have also turned brown. On Thursday, U.S. Embassy officials told U.S. citizens on Australia's south coast to leave, warning of more danger. The fires started burning in October, partly a result of an extended drought. At least 12 people have died, along with possibly millions of animals. When Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison went to meet locals in the fire danger zone, they voiced concern, saying the firefighting agency RFS needed more resources.
Good. How are you? I'm only shaking your hand if you give more funding to our RFS. So many people here have lost their homes.
In addition to low rainfall, the country has faced record-breaking high temperatures.
And coming up next, Some of the world's best cowboys are in New York today, ready to compete for a $1,000 prize. That and more after the break. Some of the world's best bull riders are in New York today. They're getting ready to compete for $1,000 in prize money. NTD's Julián Castro was at the event.
This weekend at Madison Square Garden, the top 35 bull riders in the world will be competing for $100,000. But if the Cowboys are bucked off the bull in less than 8 seconds, they have to go home empty-handed.
That's kind of what makes bull riding the most, cool sport in the world, but it's also the most humbling sport in the world. You can go from, being a millionaire one year to flat being broke the next 2 years.
But the sport also comes with life-threatening risks. One of Taylor's fellow riders died last year.
Every time we nod our head, we risk our lives.
Although the sport can be fear-inducing, for Taylor, the most important thing is how you deal with your fear.
Just because you're scared of it, don't run from it. If you're scared of it, stand up and battle it and beat it.
And just like the athletes, only the best bulls are chosen for bull riding events at this level.
If you have the best bulls in the world here, then the best guy is going to win.
The bulls are shipped all the way from Texas and were weighed in Manhattan this morning. The 3-day competition will kick off this Friday night. Reporting by Julián Castro, NTD News, New York.
And zookeepers in London did their annual Stocktake today, which they said is a job that's both daunting but enjoyable. And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Graney.